Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be looking at all of my older work, and we're going to be going through some of my older photographs from nearly 10 years ago, or maybe over 10 years ago. For those of you who don't know, I started photography going back to 2006, 2007, and one of the first platforms that I ever came across as a very young photographer, or as someone who was interested in photography at the time, was DeviantArt, and that used to be the community of choice for a lot of artists out there. And I haven't actually posted on there in a very long time. It's probably been, I would say, at least 3 or 4 years that the last time that I've posted on DeviantArt, but I thought we'd go back through some of my early work. I did actually do a video like this going back a few years ago. I can't remember quite when I did it, but I think I've just posted more work since then, and I just want to do another one because it's always fun to see where you've actually come from and how you've progressed along the way. So we're going to go back to 2007, 2008 and start looking through my really early self-portraits, and then we're going to move into some of my more conceptual and fashion work along the way. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let's get into it. So this is my DeviantArt page, and wow, I haven't been on here in quite a while. Let's just go have a look at the homepage to start with. Everything's actually changed, so this is very different to how I remember DeviantArt being a long time ago. But yeah, wow. I can see that I haven't updated my bio in, well, I'm saying I'm 23 there, so I'm nearly 30, so that's at least 7 years. Yeah, so I haven't updated this in quite a while. But wow, this is bringing back so much nostalgia and memories. I used to love DeviantArt. I would be on there like, I would say like probably 18 hours out of 24, you know? It's just, it was such a creative community, and I'm sure it still is. I mean, I haven't really done much on there recently. I actually remember seeing the first photo that actually inspired me to do photography. And it's probably something that you're not expecting. It was actually a photograph of lightning. Weirdly enough, it was just a photograph taken in my area of where I lived, and it was a really cool photograph of lightning, and I was just like, wow. I thought it was just the coolest thing in the world. And then I actually found that photo through DeviantArt somehow, and then I started looking at a lot of the portrait work that was on DeviantArt, and I found people like Lara Jade very early on who was doing so much conceptual work, and she was probably only a few years older than me. And then Zemotion, she was my other favorite photographer. She still is actually on DeviantArt. She was just incredible, and these girls were only a couple of years older than me, which just made me so inspired and so keen to do my own work. I think that for a long time, my work started to look very much like Lara Jade's, though. I think I was so inspired by her that I tended to mimic a lot of the stuff that she did. So it's a little bit embarrassing to look at my work now, in some ways. Looking back on it, I was like, God, you really could have thought of some other ideas. But I think at 16, 17, you see these inspirations and you see these inspiring people, and you just you want to be able to do work like them. So it doesn't always cross your mind to be the most original. So I'm going to go right back here to when I first started posting. And that was a long time ago. I think the first photo I ever posted on DeviantArt was 2007. Here we go. This was the first photo that I ever posted, and it was the first photo shoot really that I ever did with my SLR camera. I had a Canon 400D that my dad bought, and then I had to go and pay him back. I just wanted it so badly. I felt like it was going to change my photography completely from the little point and shoot that I had. I think it was like a little Sony. And I was like, no, if I get the Canon 400D, it's going to make my photography so much better. I'm going to be such a professional if I have it. So I remember the first ever photo shoot that I actually did with it, and it was a self-portrait shoot. This one I'm about to show you here. And because self-portraits was such a huge thing back then, I was like, expecting this camera to make me look better as well, and I was like, oh, I don't look any better with this camera. That's strange. It's not really changing anything about my photography at all. And I think I knew on the first day that I did that photo shoot of myself, I think I actually realized that the camera didn't matter that much, and it was all about experimenting, and it was going to be about what I could actually bring to the table in terms of my creativity and how I set up the photos. This is one of the first ever photos that I did take with it, and as you can see, it is edited so much. I think I put it into Photoshop and just used the blur tool and the smudge tool and just like went nuts. Also changed my eye color a lot. I don't know what I was doing, to be honest. Like that was just 16-year-old me at the time. So yep, that was my first ever photo to DeviantArt, and my first ever photo really online in terms of photography. That was kind of my first time sharing anything. So as you can see, as we went along, I started to experiment more with makeup a little bit and really try some different things out. I remember this photo I was so proud of. I was literally so proud of this photo, even though it's not, like, it's technically a photo manipulation with the butterfly, but I just thought it was amazing. But like, looking at it now, it's so blown out, and yeah, I don't know why I loved it so much, but I think I was proud of it because it was like an actual concept, or I tried out something that was a little bit more conceptual. And yeah, not my favorite now though, I will say. And then going up, I like to do a lot of horror stuff. I was very much a part of the whole emo trend back then, so that stuff was really cool to me. I like doing sort of dark and scary, moody stuff. Here I'm just experimenting more and more with my Canon 400D. A lot of self-portraits because I was very shy at this point in time. I didn't feel like I could reach out to my family members even, or my friends, or anyone really to do a photo shoot. So it did take me probably from about 2006 to 2010, about 4 years or so, to work up the courage. I did actually photograph, that's my friend there, Jamie, and I photographed her a couple of times, and I started to become a little bit more confident after photographing some of my friends. I photographed my brother, as you can see there, and yeah, so I did take that 4 years to build up my confidence a little bit. And then finally in 2010, I photographed my first ever photo shoot with a model. I'm just like confirming that it was posted in 2010. Yeah, November 16, 2010. So this was the first photo shoot I ever did with a model, and it was through Model Mayhem that I found the girls. I decided to do a Snow White themed photo shoot, as you do for your first ever model photo shoot. And I really loved conceptual stuff back then. I think I didn't even know what fashion photography really was. And I had no real desire to do that. I didn't know what it was. And I guess fashion was never something that I was super interested in at that age. I loved makeup a lot, but fashion was always kind of a bit foreign to me. And I didn't really know what it meant to be a fashion photographer. So it wasn't even on my radar at this point. So we go through some more self-portraits here, some more Snow White. And here we are. This is like one of my first photo shoots with a model that I worked with on a very regular basis. So this was probably my second photo shoot ever. And this was with a model called Oshina. And I actually worked with Oshina many times in future from this point onwards. And I'm actually planning with working with her again actually soon. And this was pretty much when I got my Canon 5D Mark II. This was when I upgraded and I'd started my course, my diploma, and I started to experiment more with that. But at this point, I'd actually done a lot more, and I think there's like an area there where you can go into maybe your scraps. Yes. This is where my really terrible work lies, because this is where I filtered out a lot of the worst kind of photos. So I'm going to go back to the beginning here because we sort of jumped ahead there a little bit. Yeah, so I did actually do a lot more experimenting. This is kind of more with my 400D here. More with my friend Jamie, but then I steadily transitioned into using my 5D Mark II, and I started to become more interested in fashion overall. I started to realize that there was a lot more to it than the fashion that I had about in my head, and I actually realized that it was something that is so creative that you can almost do anything with. And that really appealed to me, and I think that's why I ended up going down that road. There's a lot of really dark, horrific looking images there, and then just kind of moving into some of my more creative work. And the thing is, I think what people don't realize a lot of the time is this stuff just doesn't happen overnight. You can look through my entire DeviantArt feed and realize that I have actually been photographing for over 10 years. And it's taken me over 10 years to get to this point. I know a lot of people will move at different speeds, and there's a lot of people out there that have been a lot quicker at getting to that point than me and getting to a better point. But for me, being so introverted when I was younger, I needed that slower going process to really start building confidence within my work and building confidence within myself. It did take me a long time to do. And I think that's why I did self-portraits for so long, because self-portraits were that thing that I could do at any time. I could experiment at any time. And although I wasn't always confident with my appearance, I felt like I could do lots of different things with makeup and lots of different concepts. So that was why it kind of appealed to me. Although looking back at them now, I feel like a lot of them aren't that conceptual. They're just kind of pretty stock standard portraits. But I remember taking this photo here. Oh my gosh, this is so old. I'm pretty sure I was 19. Yeah, I actually took this just before I turned 20 years old. So I'm actually kind of glad I did this shot now, because this was actually a shot that I was taking when I was 19. So this was 10 years ago that I took this image. And it was such a strange thing for me to be going from my teens into my 20s. And that's why I sort of took the photo to immortalize myself as a 19-year-old. And I'm sort of glad I took the photo now. It's sort of nice to look back on and realize how far you've come, and realize that you're not the same person anymore that you were 10 years ago. Like, I was so shy, guys. I can't even explain to you. I couldn't go up to a cashier or anyone to buy a coffee. I was so painfully shy. And I just feel like, I think my confidence has come so far, especially with YouTube and having the community on here as well. And reaching out through videos over the last 5 or 6 years has just been so good. It's funny, I do miss this sense of creativity that I had when I first started photography, although some of my photos were not the best. Looking back now, I think, well, I was so inspired all the time. I had so many creative ideas. And you know what? I think when you get into your freelance business and you start doing a lot of work, you tend to lose that sometimes. You tend to feel like you don't always have that inspiration. And that's kind of sad to look back and think of how fresh you were and how inspired you were, and just wishing that you kind of had that still, like that fire still. And it's not that I don't have a fire to do photography and fashion photography. There's definitely passion there still, and it's I would rather not be doing anything else. But I do wish I still had that enthusiasm that I had as a 19, 20-year-old. I remember being so proud of this photo in particular as well. This was like one of my photos that always did really well online through Flickr and through DeviantArt. You can see there's 1,000 favorites on there, so I got very excited when that happened for that image. I think this was where I started to, probably towards the end of 2011, I started to find a little bit more of a style with color grading my work and trying to kind of fit my images in with each other. So you can see there's just so many different types of images here. I was kind of all over the place. I didn't really know how to curate a portfolio. I just had an idea and then I would go for it. And you know what? That's such a great thing, I think, as a young person or as an aspiring photographer. If you've got an idea, just to go for it and actually experiment to see with what you like taking photos of, because it differs from person to person. So I had so many images here where I started to get really into fashion photography. And I did tend to edit the crap out of my photos. I will say that, like, that's one thing that I just didn't hold back with back then. And you can really see it in a lot of my photos. There's a lot of retouching going on, but there's a lot of photos here that I was very proud of at the time. This one here I really liked. It had 2,000 favorites I could see here and nearly 50,000 views. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it did so well. And I think there was that validation as well from DeviantArt. Like when you were progressing with your portfolio, you felt like there was people following you and they could tell you, when you were getting better and give you that advice. And I do miss that a lot. So as I said, I started to sort of develop more of a style. I was still very interested in conceptual work though. As you can see, I've done lots of series. Dreams and Nightmares series was one of the ones that I focused on doing. I was really interested in pursuing things that were a little bit darker and creepier as well. And then I sort of started to, I think, get out of that with the different types of teams I was working with too. I started to work with more creatives, more makeup artists and stylists, and you started to create different types of photographs together. There's just so many different images here though. Wow, it's bringing up so much nostalgia for me. I remember traveling all over the place to try and do some of these shots too. Like this one was done in Canberra. I traveled there to do some shoots with a model, and a lot of them done in Sydney. And this is actually, I remember this, it was actually from my diploma course. I started doing some more conceptual work there because we had some conceptual projects that we had to do. And I think this project was about a harmful influence. So we had to do things that represented maybe fear or things to do with that subject. So I did keep doing a lot more conceptual things there. I was still doing my fashion work on the side. If you look at a lot of what I was doing during my diploma course, and that's been from quite a bit of where I've been scrolling, I actually didn't produce a lot of the work throughout my diploma course at all. So for those of you thinking that you just do a course and then you become a professional photographer and you've got a portfolio, a lot of the time that doesn't work. It doesn't happen. So a lot of this was done outside of my diploma course, and I made these contacts outside of that. The course alone, really looking back on it now, was just to help me a little bit with the technical side of things, maybe provoking thought processes when you're doing photography. But for the most part, I think anyone can be a professional photographer and not necessarily have a degree or diploma behind them. So here I'm moving into a little bit more fashion work, steadily kind of getting different models and working with agency models as well. I started to do that a little bit more often, and I felt like my work sort of lifted a little bit once I started working with agency models too, because you start to realize that more experienced models will really help you with your portfolio. They'll be a lot better at posing. You won't have to give as much direction. And that was something that I did struggle with a lot when I was younger, because I was quite shy. So I didn't really want to push anything too far, or, you know, become annoying or feel annoying to anyone. And yeah, just like moving into more of a style with my images. As you can see, it starts to get a little bit more refined too. I think I was so into the editing process a lot of the time that I forgot about the photography process at times when I was younger, and actually thinking of a concept that stuck. And I think, as you can see, as I'm getting a little bit more older and a little bit more through my portfolio here, you can see my work starts to refine a little bit. So after this point, this is actually the first time I was living in Melbourne, and then I actually went traveling. And you guys might remember my 52-week project that I did in 2018. And I actually went traveling for about 3.5 months, nearly 4 months out of that year. And I decided to do a 52-week project that year. I'm not really sure why I decided to do that in a year where I was so busy already and traveling around so much. But I managed to get through it, and I managed to do it. And from about this point onwards is when I started traveling, and I started working with different models all across the globe. And it was just such a fun experience. I loved shooting in all these different locations and working with the different locations that we were going to and being inspired by that. And I was able to work with a lot of agency models too on this trip. I can kind of name some of the countries. So we started off in Hong Kong, and then I went to Vietnam, and then it was London, Italy. It was just such a great project to do to really improve my photography too. I can't believe that's 2 years ago, or over 2 years ago now. It's nearly 3. But yeah, walking through Italy and using the streets. And then we went to Sweden. And then Vancouver, I think, was one of my last areas that I did some photo shoots, along with LA. And I really enjoyed doing the photo shoots in LA. I felt like the model agencies there were amazing and the models were great. It was really good to work with such professional and experienced girls. And then I came back to Australia, and I actually started working a little bit more in studio and doing a few more studio shoots here and there. And after I started doing that, I moved back to Melbourne again. And this time I ended up getting a job as a retoucher. And during this time I was doing photo shoots, and I absolutely loved it. I was working with more agencies down in Melbourne too, and I felt like I'd started to refine my work to a point where people were starting to really become interested in booking me for fashion jobs more and more, and it got me to the point where I actually ended up quitting the job, retouching and freelancing for that company instead. So that was a really good time in my life where I finally started to do this full time, and it felt like I was finally getting some success out of my business and out of my work. And the more I experimented, I was doing these photo shoots like consistently throughout the year. This was still part of my 52-week project, and I wanted to make sure that I saw it through. And you can see here I started to get into a little bit more beauty around the middle end of 2018. And here's when I did my Japan photo shoot, which was so much fun. And yeah, I just started to slowly work into doing more beauty shots. And this is really the turning point here. This is when I worked with Stella too for the first time, and we formed a relationship and a bond, and we just ended up working together so much out of the course of 2018 and 2019 together, and getting our portfolios so much filled with beauty and learning together as well, because it was a very big learning curve going from doing a lot of natural light photo shoots to then suddenly going into beauty full on. Was just so different to me. I felt like I wasn't even experienced in studio at this point, but I felt like to get that experience with studio was so good to start off with beauty photography, because you don't need a lot to start with beauty. And I think that sort of starts you off small, and then you start to work up to those more fashion style images where you need a bigger lighting setup. So I found that this really helped me move into studio work better. And you can see I just kept doing beauty from then on. There's not a lot of fashion that I started to do. I started to move away from natural light. And pretty much the whole of 2019 was beauty. And you can see here, just like all of the images are just experimenting with beauty, experimenting with different shots, and it's just crazy how far and how much I've actually done in the last few years in terms of test shoots. Just going through the whole of 2019 here, it's pretty much all beauty. And then we move into 2020, which has been an interesting year to say the least. I feel like I've shot less this year than I probably have in the last 10 years of my life, which is really unfortunate, because I even had a year there where I was working full-time at a travel agency and I really didn't shoot a lot at all, and I still feel like I've shot less than I did in that year. So a lot of what I've been posting on Instagram unfortunately has been previous year's work. So yeah, as I was saying, it's like a lot of pretty much what I've got on my Instagram has been previous year's works, and it's just kind of like when we hit here that I've actually started to do some newer work. And some of you guys might know that I have got a studio now in Sydney, and that only happened recently, so that has been a lot more helpful for me getting up there and doing test shoots since the lockdowns ended for coronavirus. But this is some of my new work here, or newer work, and this is kind of like some of my stuff that I've done towards the end of this year. And then I've got a few more reposts there, and then going right up to my newest work here. And I've actually started to move into a little bit more natural light beauty. So pretty much with the exception of this image here and this image here, this is all natural light. So I've found that that's really exciting, and it's a new level of beauty photography that I hadn't really tapped into before. So I really am enjoying using natural light for beauty photography, and it's actually just such an exciting thing, you know, to look completely back to where I started now, you know, over 10 years ago, and looking at what I'm doing now. It's so exciting to know how quickly photography evolves and how you refine your work, and the fact that it's always different. I will never be embarrassed about looking back at my work from well over 10 years ago now, because I know that it's completely normal, and I know that it's such a wonderful thing to be able to see how far you've come. I think if I looked back on my work 10 years ago and it was just as good as it was today, or I hadn't seen much change, then there's no fun in that. There's no progression, and you can't really feel as proud of yourself because you don't feel like you've come as far. So I'm really happy with my progress over the last 10 years. Like I said, for me, it was a lot more difficult. Some people might find that they progress a lot more quickly with their portfolios. I think because I was so afraid of putting myself out there, it really took me a long time to build that confidence. But, you know, everyone works at their own pace, and at the end of the day, I'm just glad that I stuck with it and I didn't give up, because if I had have done that, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please click the subscribe button and the notification bell to make sure you see all the videos that I have coming up in future. And let me know in the comments section what you thought about this video and what you thought about my work from 10 years ago. Did you like it? Was it okay? I mean, I have very mixed feelings about it overall, but I think that's completely okay. And yeah, tell me what you think, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!